Retro.
Hey, this is Lauren Mary Kim, and I'm the stunt double for Ahsoka Tano in Clone Wars and the armorer in The Mandalorian. You're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. This is the way.
Hello there, and welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
Oh, come on. You know you want to say it too.
Hello there. I'm Jay Krebs. I know I was holding back.
Yeah. Well, this episode is the most appropriate one for it. So, speaking of which, this is part 5 of our Revenge of the Sith series. And before we start that, Jay, why don't you remind everybody what our social media contacts are?
You got it, Dennis. We are on Facebook and Instagram conveniently at Podcast Stardust.
All right. This is aligned. The signal is boosted to maximum output. The shield is down. We are now broadcasting to the galaxy. So, like I was just saying, this is part 5 of our Revenge of the Sith series, the perhaps most popular thing we do here on the podcast. And this is moving right along. We've got a great segment here that features stuff going on at Utapau and General Grievous and the like. And let's not delay any longer. Let's dive into it. We've got a great guest for you. And this is, like I said, part 5. So it is our honor to welcome back to the show, Alan Zaugg from Idiot's Array. Alan, how are you doing this evening?
I am good. It's been a while, and I'm so excited to be here to talk to you guys. It's been quite a while.
It has been. We're so tickled to have you back.
Indeed we are. And let's dive right into what we've got going on here. We kick off our Revenge of the Sith episodes by asking some common questions to all of our guests, just to kind of get a feel for where they are with this movie. Alan, I know the last time we were on the show, you told us that Revenge of the Sith was your favorite Star Wars movie. Is that still the case?
That has not changed. It is still true. Yes, my favorite film and favorite John Williams score. All of it. It's a fantastic movie.
Indeed. Okay. Well, Jay, you want to go ahead and kick off the rest of the questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Alan, what was your first experience seeing Revenge of the Sith? You know, how old were you? What do you recall? Any special memories? So, yeah.
I was. You guys, we were just talking prior to the call. Let's see, I'm 51, so I was 31 years old. Is that right? Am I doing the math right? Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
And I had 2 kids at the time. My son hadn't been born yet. And I had kind of been a veteran of it already because we'd seen the prequel, we'd seen the episodes 1 and 2 already. And so I was all prepped. First time I remember seeing this, I was giddy. I remember watching the trailer, the original teaser trailer, and I'm not gonna lie, I lost it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing ever. Seeing Palpatine, all of that. I was just thrilled. And then I remember sitting with a buddy of mine, and I sat there and watched this film and just fell in love with it from the opening sequence. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I think I saw it a couple more times that week. I liked to go with each of these films. I like to hit them 3 or 4 times in that first week they were released.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get to go with the re-release recently?
Yes, I did. So
Awesome.
I had intended to and wanted to, and never found the time. And then finally, my son, who had never seen it in the theater, and my kids all were like, "Dad, we need to go do this." And I was like, yes, we do. So we scheduled a night and went and saw it. It was a $5 Tuesday night, and it was great and had a good time. So it was nice to see it all over again.
It's great reliving it. Yeah, it's great reliving it with your kids that weren't maybe old enough to see it the first time around. I know my son and I did that too.
Yeah, movie that's meant to be seen on the big screen for sure.
Yes, it is.
So what is your favorite scene from Revenge of the Sith?
Wow. There's a couple of them. They generally all involve Palpatine and Anakin together, but one of them I think you guys talked about your last episode. I think we're going to pick up a little later than that, but was the opera scene. In fact, my memories of it, if my memory serves me well, that particular scene, clips of it was in the original teaser trailer, which got me all giddy, and that was what I was excited about. But that one, and then when the two of them were talking in the Chancellor's office, and Anakin raised his lightsaber to him, and Palpatine says, are you you're going to kill me? And he says, I would very much like to. And he says,
Yeah.
good, I can feel your anger. It gives you focus, makes you stronger. And I like those two scenes probably are two of my favorites in the movie.
Oh gosh, yeah, those are definitely give you the chills, that's for sure. So great choices. So if you had to pick one character from Revenge of the Sith that you would say is your favorite in this movie, who would it be?
Anakin Skywalker.
Nice. You didn't even hesitate. I love
Yeah,
that.
so I.
No,
It's just
he and Vader, I mean, obviously the same, but are my favorite of all Star Wars characters. And Palpatine's right up there, but no, it's Anakin in a heartbeat.
Nice. I'm with
all
you.
right. Yeah, I mean, he is the engine that makes this movie go. So that is a very good choice. All right. Well, let's go ahead and then dive into the segment. We start at 48 minutes exactly, and this runs to the 1 hour and 54-second mark for those of you who want to watch this at home. The segment opens with kind of a I'm not sure exactly how to describe it, but a scene that takes place in two places with on Kashyyyk and the Jedi Council's chambers. The Republic and the Wookiees are preparing for the Separatist attack, and meanwhile, you've got Anakin having just informed the Jedi Council that General Grievous is in Utapau, and the Chancellor wants Anakin to lead the mission. Alan, this again, this scene opens up with a lot of shots of Kashyyyk and the Wookiee homeworld, and we get to see them all over the place. More Wookiees than we've ever seen in any one location. What did you think about Kashyyyk as it was introduced in Revenge of the Sith?
It was so cool. I was so excited to see the homeworld of Chewbacca, even if it was under war. And the colors, the greens, the dark greens, and everything about it visually was just a beautiful scene. And even before we got on the show, even before I had even rewatched the scene, the music hits me. It's a great motif from John Williams too. That da 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 da. I was like, that's so cool. But yeah, no, I love this. I loved Kashyyyk. Kashyyyk was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
And then we've got Chewbacca and Tarful there. Oh, Jay, what do you think about them including Chewbacca here?
So I loved seeing Chewbacca in this. And I remember just being so excited and thinking, oh my gosh, they went here and they brought him, this legacy character, if you will, into these prequels. And I just thought it fit so well because it just was the thread that tied everything together. And we knew that the Wookiees had longevity. So, there was a little bit of that kind of helped to explain it. But I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
Are either of you kind of bugged at all that we have this direct meeting between Chewbacca and Yoda, and then like this never came up with Luke afterwards in the original? I mean, of course, those movies were made first and stuff like that, but it does create a minor continuity. I mean, it doesn't bother me. It just could be a simple thing that Chewbacca never thought it was important to talk about Jedi with Luke, even though that was what Luke was interested in doing. But either one of you have any thoughts on that?
No, I don't. And you mentioned that Chewbacca never thought to bring it up. I think there was a lot to that as well. And you could sit back and think, well, maybe he knew who Anakin Skywalker was too. There's a lot of crossover here, but knowing where the galaxy went, knowing that Order 66 had happened, knowing that Chewbacca had seen all of that, it doesn't surprise me that he probably didn't even want to bring it up and maybe was hesitant to do so in the current Imperial settings because maybe it wasn't the best to do so. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't bother me.
Yeah, no, I'm with you because, I mean, with everything that we know about the way that the Empire ended up treating the Wookiees, I think you're right, Alan. There was a lot of probably self-preservation for himself and his family in there. And I mean, it could very well be just like R2D2. He just knew how to keep a secret.
Yeah.
What do you think that is?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, obviously, we're not privy to every conversation that Chewbacca and Luke have ever had. And it's not clear that Luke always knew what Chewbacca was talking about anyway, when it comes down to it. But perhaps they did talk about this after Return of the Jedi. And we just don't know, because when would it have been relevant? Chewbacca had no idea that Luke was even going to go to Dagobah until he went. And then,
nor did he know that Yoda was alive.
right. Yeah. All he knows is Yoda left there at some point in the course of this movie, but it wasn't from here to Dagobah. So at any rate, there's, like I said, it's just given that Luke and was hanging around with this old Jedi Knight, Obi-Wan Kenobi, at some point, it seemed like it might have been of interest for Chewbacca, because he's not quite as jaded as Han Solo was, that he might mention this. But again, it's just a thing, and it doesn't particularly bother me, but thought I'd check with you guys. The other part of this scene, of course, is the discussion of the Jedi Council deciding what to do with this news that they have that General Grievous is on Utapau. And of course, the Chancellor had already told Anakin in the opera scene that, he would question the collective wisdom of the Council if they didn't send Anakin on that mission. And here he is saying that the Chancellor's requested I go, very political of Anakin to phrase it the way he did. But then the Council decides that someone older and more experienced should go, and so they decide to send Obi-Wan Kenobi here. Alan, what is your thought on that decision to send Obi-Wan rather than Anakin, or both of them, on that mission?
So I don't think it doesn't surprise me, considering what has already taken place thus far in the movie, and that is that the council has already said, look, we're going to have Anakin keep an eye on the Chancellor, and we're going to welcome the fact that he's been placed on the council, but we're doing so, hesitantly, but we're doing so because we want to know what's going on with the Chancellor. And also, obviously Mace Windu at this point in time is probably the driving force behind this, but not trusting Anakin enough in this scenario. And I think that's what it comes down to, is that there's not a lot of trust with the Jedi Council right now with Anakin because of his close relationship to Palpatine. So they're not willing to acknowledge that in any way if they can avoid it.
No, I
What
agree.
are your thoughts, Jay?
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to read the entire segment that we're watching tonight in the Matthew Stover novel, but I did get to read this part of it. And I agree that Mace Windu was definitely probably a driving force in, trying to keep Anakin, from getting his way because of Palpatine. But the book kind of does explain it well, in the fact that they wanted Anakin on Coruscant because they knew that he was a force to be reckoned with, and that if they did end up disclosing whoever the Sith was, that they were going to need him there. That Obi-Wan could handle Grievous, but they needed Anakin on Coruscant. So I like that explanation. It kind of excludes them a little bit from some of that, the blame, so to speak, of looking at Mace in that way. But I still, from the movie perspective, I do think that it was the whole trust issue.
Well, see, that's the thing for me, is that we're coming off a scene just not too long ago in this movie where it was Obi-Wan, Mace Windu, and Yoda in the Lat gunship as they were delivering Yoda to his ship so he could even come to Kashyyyk. And Mace Windu is, talking about how much it's just probably a mistake to put Anakin and Palpatine together, and he doesn't think that Anakin can handle it, and he doesn't trust him. Well, if that's the case, why doesn't Mace Windu argue for getting him off the planet? Send him with the guy he does trust him to be with, Obi-Wan, his former master, on that one. So for me,
well,
go ahead, Alan.
I was going to add that that scene is what I was thinking of, but also we just, right before this scene, we watched Palpatine, and I haven't read the Matthew Stover novel. I really need to. I've read almost all the other novels. This one's the one I haven't read, but I'm sure it goes into more detail on this. But we see, and we don't see everything in play, but that the Chancellor has been spending a lot of time, both in the opera and otherwise, infusing into Anakin's mind that the Council doesn't trust him, that they don't see that he's a worthwhile person to put responsibility on, this and that and this and that. So I felt like this scene was only it fit perfectly into that scenario, right? Because this just builds off of that. He just got through hearing from the Chancellor they don't trust him. Now they're showing they really don't trust him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's
and
true.
it is unfortunate in that regards, because if they had sent Anakin there, do we get Order 66 at all? Or does Anakin
Right?
have an opportunity to fall to the dark side in this case? Or does he become a target of the clones and becomes part of the force that's trying to take Palpatine down and all of this? So
Right.
it's a fun what if, but probably best saved for its own episode at some time. I'm going to move on because we still have a lot to cover here in this one. So moving on, I got to tell you, it was the viewing that I did this most recently at the theater of Revenge of the Sith, where I finally noticed the Separatist craft landing in the background, like across the water. And I had never I don't know how many times I've seen this movie, but I never noticed those ships landing before in the background from that viewpoint you get from where Yoda and Tarful and Chewbacca are meeting. But that was pretty cool to finally notice. But then we get to see the droids attack, and we've got some of their tanks with the tread coming across the water. We've got battle droids on them. We've got the dwarf spider droids coming up out of the water, and then the Wookiees jump up out of their trench and give a fierce growl and defiance. And then the battle's on there. I love this scene. It's one of the shortcomings of the novelization that they don't really dwell on it at all, that Matt Stover does, but he's explained that, saying he wanted to concentrate more on Anakin and the conflict that he's going through, and that's all good. But again, what stands out to you about the battle, Alan?
That scene where the Wookiees all stand in unison and raise their hands above their head is one of my favorites. In fact, it's one of my favorite gifs that I oftentimes will use on social media when I'm saying something, is that I share this, because I'm just picturing in my mind, oh, and they're all raising their hands and all in unison, ready to fight. It's one of the coolest things. Seriously, an army of Wookiees, is that not one of the coolest things in all of Star Wars?
Oh, it really is. And I mean, we've only, with the original trilogy, we knew Chewbacca and that was it. And we never really were treated to the full scope of what their warrior civilization and just their strength in numbers were all about. And yeah, so it was awesome. Although I will say I wasn't a big fan of the Tarzan yell. I don't know about you
No?
guys, but no, I just thought it was like, "Oh, come on, couldn't they come up with some more original than the Tarzan yell?"
Well,
okay, that's fair. That's fair. I did kind of laugh at that one just a little bit. It made me cringe slightly. I'm with you.
I liked it simply because it was a reflection of what Chewbacca did in Return of the Jedi during the Battle of
yeah.
Endor, when he did the Tarzan yell, when he and the Ewoks were going to take over that ATST. So, for that, as we bring up all the time, George Lucas is famous for, well, many things, but, one of his most famous quotes is that this is like poetry, things rhyme. And of course, there's that moment that goes through. And of course, with this scene being a stand-in for the Battle of Endor in its own way, here you've got the savages, so to speak, and the Wookiees, but this time they're teaming up with the armored soldiers to face off against somebody else. And so, at any rate, I love this scene. I would have loved for it to get the amount of attention that the Battle of Endor did in Return of the Jedi, just to see these Wookiees really go at it against the droids. I mean, there's a reputation for Wookiees pulling arms out of sockets that had to come from
Yes.
somewhere. I would have loved to have seen it here, because it would have been like ample opportunity for it.
Mhm.
But
Yes.
but it is what it is, and it's a fantastic scene. So, okay. this is one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie coming up. And this is when Obi-Wan gets to his Venator class cruiser and he's saying his goodbyes to Anakin. And it starts off with Anakin saying, Obi-Wan, hey, Master, you're going to need me on this one. And Obi-Wan agrees, but then he says, it might turn out to be nothing but a wild bantha chase. And then it gets very heartfelt and some of the best acting in this entire movie. Anakin says, Master, I've disappointed you. I haven't been very appreciative of your training. I've been arrogant and I apologize. I've just been so frustrated with the council. Obi-Wan kind of smiles at him and says, you are strong and wise, Anakin, and I'm very proud of you. I have trained you since you were a small boy. I've taught you everything I know, and you've become a far greater Jedi than I ever could hope to be. But be patient, Anakin. It will not be long before the council makes you a Jedi Master. And then as he turns to leave, Anakin says, Obi-Wan, may the Force be with you. And then Obi-Wan's response is, goodbye, old friend. May the Force be with you. These are the last kind words that these two exchange. And it is, you don't know it at the time when you're watching Revenge of the Sith for the first time. But the next time that they see each other, they're angry, they're mad, and then they come to blows with the lightsabers on this. So it's on rewatches that it really sinks in how sad this is. But Alan, what is it about this scene? What does it say to you?
This is why I love having discussion like this, because there are perspectives of others that kind of draw some feels in me that I didn't catch before. And you're right. I hadn't even thought about the fact that this is the last scene the two of them have together until Mustafar. And so, yeah, this is crazy. But I do like that. It's really an interesting transition and a reflection of Anakin's confliction within himself, because you see him earlier in the movie talking to Padmé about how he feels that he's not trusted, how this. You saw moments where he's talking to Obi-Wan in the past where he's like, I can't believe you're asking me to spy on the council. I mean, on the chancellor, this and that. And now it's all coming full circle to where Anakin's like, you know what? That's my bad. I haven't been. And you can see there's conflict because he knows he hasn't been the best and done what he's supposed to do. And he hasn't been there. But just for this moment, he's with Obi-Wan, reflecting on all of that, going, you know what? I'm sorry. I haven't been the best. Granted, he's not with Palpatine at the moment, so he can forget all of that. But there's a stark contrast between this and Mustafar, but this and the previous conversations he and Obi-Wan have had to this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Jay, what do you think?
It's so heartbreaking too, because, as you pointed out, Dennis, this is their last civil, heartfelt conversation. And it's also a point where Anakin has shown growth. And then it's almost like, this is where he peaks. And then obviously it just all falls apart from here. So it's, as you said, you just never know when the last time something is that's going to happen. Of course, we have that benefit of being able to see because we know what's going to happen. But yeah, it's just it's so hard to watch this sometimes. I'll be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the thing is like you can see the anguish in Anakin, like when he realizes, I've disappointed you. It's the first thing he says, and he's looking back on everything that's happened over the last couple days, since they rescued the Chancellor, and he's thinking of the tantrum he threw in the Jedi Council and they didn't make him a master,
Mm-hmm.
and he's talking about his frustration there. And Obi-Wan has tried, we've talked about those scenes in past episodes, but he's tried to be, to reason with Anakin to help him see what's going on here and why there's issues and things like that. But Anakin didn't want to see it. Anakin was right about some things, but he was wrong about others. But just to get to see these words between them there and just them reflect on the relationship and how far they've come over this. And then, when Obi-Wan says, goodbye, old friend, may the Force be with you. I mean, some people don't like to say goodbye because there's the finality to goodbye here. And when we talk about other Star Wars movies, and Obi-Wan talks about from a certain point of view, this is when he lost Anakin right here. And Anakin's, it's not long after this, Anakin ceased to be Anakin and became Darth Vader.
And I want to talk about contrast for a second, because we started this conversation by you talking about Anakin, this is the last time we see them have civil conversations, so on and so forth. But there's a couple of things I offer. First of all, after you watch this film, anybody when the next time anybody watches this film, I challenge you, when you're done with this film, skip A New Hope, go straight to Empire Strikes Back, and everything you see in Empire your mind will be completely open to a new experience, because it's one of my favorite things to do. Because not taking A New Hope out of this altogether, but just the idea of watching Anakin turn and then watching Anakin or Vader on the path that he was in Empire is just incredible. But it's that contrast that really got me. And you see the way that they're talking to each other here. And you can throw the Obi-Wan series into it too, right? Where Obi-Wan towards the end of this movie says, I have failed you. But then we go to the time that they meet up in the Obi-Wan series, and you see Anakin say, no, you didn't do this to me. I did this.
Mm-hmm.
I did this to me. And it just, now you have a chance to see it all as a whole. Like you said, we're seeing this all as a whole. And it's like, whoa, this is cool.
Yeah.
This is all the feels are right here. Oh my gosh.
Oh, it's so true. And I've seen some people that have cut some of those scenes together from the Obi-Wan Kenobi series and Empire Strikes Back, and even A New Hope, and just Obi-Wan talking to Luke about how he was, the best star pilot in the galaxy, and he was a good friend. And you could just see him reflecting on it. And it's, you talk about getting hit in the feels. Whew, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the other thing about this, and not to belabor the point, is that this has been stressing Obi-Wan out. Everything's been going on with Anakin, and that we've seen over the course of this movie. And you got to believe that he was feeling some relief here. It's like Anakin's finally come to his senses. He's realized his behavior's not been great. He's starting to understand the perspective of the other Jedi around him. Acknowledging, I've been arrogant. I apologize. I've been frustrated with the Council. And the next time that we see Obi-Wan on Coruscant, it's like him realizing that, no, it was bad and it's gone to so much worse. You didn't get the relief you wanted. And so it's, there's got to be, when he's talking about disappointment, Anakin here at the beginning, he has no idea what's about to happen. So.
True.
All right. Well, let's get on to Obi-Wan boards the ship. They take off. They are in space, and Obi-Wan is meeting with Commander Cody and the other clones. And this is as much a scene for the audience as anything, kind of explaining where the movie is going to go. And, this is what Utapau looks like. This is where they are. And so Obi-Wan's going to scout ahead. And then I can't remember exactly what Obi-Wan says, but, he says, and then Cody's response is, oh, come on, when have I ever let you down? And Obi-Wan says, you're right. It's the burns on me not to destroy all the droids before you arrive. And so then he takes off in his starfighter and hooks up to the hyperspace ring, and off he goes. I don't know that there's a lot of conversation to be had about this very short scene, but is there anything that stands out to you about it, Alan?
So recently, when we rewatched this a couple weeks ago, this particular scene and the banter between them, we don't know much about it when we see this film, right? But when 2008 rolls around and George and Dave come up with the Clone Wars series, and we watch that unfold, it's like, oh, this makes even more sense now, right? They're bantering because look at what they've been doing for the last, 4 or 5, however many years it's been in the Clone Wars, where they've been battling with each other on how many kills. This shows a military moment at its best, but a banter between two friends, two battle-hardened individuals who have served with each other for so long. This particular scene has new life and new meaning now that we've watched the Clone Wars series.
Oh yeah,
very much so. And how about you, Jeff?
Oh no, I'm totally with you, Alan, and I could echo everything that you just said. And I really love seeing this scene from that perspective. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, then getting on to another very important scene, we're at Padmé's apartment, and Anakin is kind of coming to after he's had a vision of Padmé in childbirth and being consoled by Obi-Wan. And when he comes to, he looks up and says, Obi-Wan's been here, hasn't he? And Padmé responds, well, he was here this morning and he was concerned about Anakin because he's been under a lot of stress. And then Anakin acknowledges that he's been feeling lost, and he says that the Jedi Council and Obi-Wan don't trust him, which I kind of question whether that's really fair to say after the scene we just talked about with Obi-Wan and Anakin. But anyways, we'll move on from there. Padmé's response is they trust you with their lives. And then he says, something's happening. I'm not the Jedi I should be. I want more, and I know I shouldn't. The conversation goes on from there to say Anakin has found a way to save Padmé from his nightmares, and he won't lose her. And she promises she's not going to die in childbirth. And then he says, no, I promise you. There's plenty of things to talk about in this scene, but the thing that stood out to me when I was doing my notes that I never really paid as much attention to is that Anakin says to Padmé, I found a way to save you from my nightmares. Well, what's that way? It was just what Palpatine was talking about, and it's something that a Jedi can't teach Anakin. So my question to you, Alan, is what was Anakin thinking this was that he was going to learn from Palpatine or elsewhere that he was going to be able to use for Padmé? And was this him honestly considering doing something drastic, like turning to the Sith, even though he didn't even know that Chancellor Palpatine was a Sith at the time?
So I do need to correct something I said earlier because I had my scenes flipped. You're right. This came after the fact because I said a few minutes ago that it came before the fact. But there's a couple of things that stand out. And to answer your question, I still don't think he had an idea of where he was going with this. But one thing, when I originally saw this, one thing that came to mind in this scene was going back to the small little burial scene with his mother where he said, I couldn't save you. If you take that full circle, this particular scene has even more depth now. He lost his mother. He didn't want to lose his mother. He felt like he should have been able to save her because he's a powerful Jedi. Now here he is with the full intention of not losing his wife, meaning he's going to do everything it takes to get there. I don't know that he had any idea, obviously, where this was going to go. The one statement he made here, Dennis, that I think even had more depth and brevity to it than the rest. Brevity wasn't the word I was looking for. Depth was when he said, I crave more. This is the moment, I think, where we start to see the dark side shape Anakin a little bit. Because what do we know about the Sith, right? There's always two, a master and an apprentice, and the apprentice always craves power and craves it more and more and more. This was the moment where I think we start to see Anakin legitimately begin to embrace the dark side. Because he wants more power, and he knows it. He knows he shouldn't, but he wants it. And now he's going to transition to it. I want more power, but I'm going to use it to save you, having no idea where this is going to go.
Yeah,
that's a great observation.
Right. And, it's not like he complete ignorance about the source of this power, because it was from the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, a Sith Lord who grew so powerful he could stop others from dying. Ironically, not himself. But what do you think about this, Jay?
Well, yeah, I mean, Alan, you bring up some really good points there, and I hadn't thought of that as far as, one to embody the power, the other to crave it kind of thing. And I think for Anakin, maybe he was hoping that he could keep one foot in both worlds and that he could, embrace the larger sense of the Force through learning this power from Palpatine or through Palpatine's sources, if you will. And if it did mean that he had to leave the Jedi Order because of it, I think maybe he was possibly ready to embrace that, but not so much thinking he would go full dark side and, thinking that he would go to the Sith, as far as towards that as his destiny. But yeah, it's so hard to know exactly what he was thinking at that point. But one other thing I do have to bring up is the fact that this scene mirrors the one in Attack of the Clones where Padmé is packing to go to Naboo, and she's listening to Anakin talk to her about, and he's saying, Obi-Wan, he's holding me back. And Anakin's even standing the same way, the window behind him is, the same framing. Everything is the same. And Padme is trying to, listen to him and put things into perspective for him. But yet he's leapt ahead, obviously, towards this different future. So I just think that that's an incredible mirroring type thing too.
Yeah. I'm also trying to put myself in Padme's place right here. And, she's dressed, she looks like she's getting ready to leave. And then Anakin starts in on this, like, Obi-Wan was here, wasn't he? And she's like, yeah, he stopped by. He's stressed about you or concerned about you because you've been stressed. And then he's like, she can tell he's got something to say. And she's, I'm not sure confused is the right word, but it's just like, he says, I feel lost. And her response is lost. Like, what are you talking about? And then he starts talking about how Obi-Wan and the council don't trust him. And she's like, what are you talking about? They trust you with their lives. And then he keeps talking about this problem he has, something's happening. I'm not the Jedi I should be. And I don't know. It's given where this movie ends, I kind of wish that they had done more with Padme in this scene here. Let her, give her a bit more agency to address Anakin in this, as opposed to him just continuing to talk about this. I found a way to save you. And she doesn't even ask what that way is on this. And considering that Obi-Wan was just there in the morning, the other person that's closest to Anakin in this world, with this revelation, I would like to have seen her kind of question that a bit more. But I don't know. Do either you disagree, or what do you think?
I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're right. We don't, and there are a lot of scenes from Padme that I wish we would get more of, right? Because I think we get more in depth with when we watch the Clone Wars, things like that. But there are a lot of scenes I wish we'd get more of Padme and more of her. As you were talking, I was thinking about this scene and the other scene you mentioned, Jay, where I think you're seeing Padme and her wisdom as well as her motherly care, and let's not forget that Anakin is quite a bit younger than her, or a few years younger than her, and let's not forget that she might have represented just a little bit, whether he wants to admit it or not, of a mother figure for him. And so she's probably taking this all in and listening to him and just being that calming force and saying, look, they do trust you with their lives, but she's letting him go through this moment just like she did in the previous film, just to have his moment, because she knows he's got a lot of pressure and weight on him, and she's hoping to be that peaceful transition for him.
Right. His safe space.
Yeah, exactly.
Any thoughts, Jay?
Well, yeah, I kind of wish that Padme honestly would have questioned Anakin a little bit more, instead of saying, what do you mean? They trust you with their lives. Like, she was just pushing it off, like, no, you're wrong, instead of saying, well, why do you feel that way? And, and kind of the same thing that you were just saying too, about him saying, well, I found a way to save you from my nightmares. And she didn't ask, well, what is it? She just was like, I promise you, I'm not going to die. So it was almost, putting him off in a way, instead of empathizing with him a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, as much as I like Revenge of the Sith, they certainly could have done way more with Padme than what they did. Because as much as of a role that she had in The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, they just squashed all that down for the purpose of this movie. So, okay. Moving on to Utapau. Obi-Wan has arrived, and he flies down into one of the giant holes where they build their cities, and he lands on a level, and he starts talking with Tion Medon, whatever, the Pauan that's there. And he's getting spied on by a mandroid. And when he's being asked why he's there, Obi-Wan says it's because of the war. And Tion responds, well, there's no war here unless you brought it with you. And Obi-Wan is asking for fuel and be able to use the city as his base in his search for Grievous. And this is when Tion leans in and says, he's here. And, they're being held hostage. 10th level, thousands of battle droids. And so that's all Obi-Wan needs to hear. He tells people to take shelter. If they have warriors, now is the time. And then he sends R5 back to the ship with a message for Cody. So, again, this is establishing what's just about to happen here on this. Obi-Wan now knows where that Grievous is in fact there, that it is not a wild bantha chase. But world building, one of the things that, you were just talking about, Alan, with what we got to see of Kashyyyk, and I couldn't agree more. Kashyyyk is a planet I always wanted to see before we saw Revenge of the Sith, and we finally got to see it here. It looks amazing. But then Utapau, brand new for this movie, and it looks amazing. And it was very clever, very imaginative. What do you think about Utapau and what we got out of this scene?
I need some clarification here, because I've always thought this, and maybe this is a question, but also just a conversation. Mm-hmm. Remind me, Utapau, because we see this in the film, but we learn a little bit more. Isn't there a connection here with the banking clan? Or am I thinking wrong?
The banking clan is Wat Tambor, isn't it?
Okay, never mind.
Oh, no, that's the Techno Union. Yeah.
Well, the Moons are part of the banking clan.
Yes, that's right. The Moons. That's right. And
okay.
They also have tall, skinny heads.
Yeah, and I think that's where I got confused even watching this film, because for a second there I'm thinking, wait a minute, aren't these guys kind of separatists? But no, that get my silly question out of the way. But no, and I love this. I love it so much too that we miss Obi-Wan sneaking off the ship as it takes off, right? But my favorite part of this is just the phrase that he uses when he says, "They're here," and he's telling him secretly, "They're here. He's here," and like you said, that's all Obi-Wan needed to know. He needed to know he's there. He knew that, meaning that the intel that they had received that he was there. Boom, done. They're there, and now he knows what he's got to do. I don't know that there's a lot I can really say about this scene, because it just kind of sets the stage for what we're about to watch.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
No,
yeah,
you're right.
So true. Yeah, and the world building is the best way to put it, Dennis, for sure. And it's crazy because my son and I had like a 15-minute long conversation about, why does Utapau have sinkholes? And, what is it above the surface that they're more afraid of? And is that what that big skeleton thing is on the landing pad? Is that maybe that's what actually lives above the surface that they're trying to protect themselves against? And maybe that's why the water is down below, because that's their only source of fresh water. So like we were going on and on about this world itself. But I just remember thinking, when Obi-Wan first landed here, obviously the Utapans were very glad to see him, but just the respect that Jedi garner just everywhere that they go. I mean, immediately they were refueling his ship. They were coming out to meet him and just giving him the utmost respect.
And from there, Obi-Wan gets on his varactyl by the name of Boga. And I always laugh. It was, I can't remember which viewing of this movie that I finally saw the one little Uta character that's kind of handling one of the varactyls in the background. It kind of shrugs its head, and the Uta's like hanging off from the leash over the side of that platform. But that makes me laugh every time I see that. But I always flatter myself by thinking I would love to ride a varactyl, but then the next moment I realized there's no way I could control this thing, and I would be thrown off of the saddle like so quickly. But it, again, in a movie full of cool things, this is one of them. Getting to see Obi-Wan go charging off on this thing and watching it, scale up the side of the walls and just get him up. Although I'm not sure how he actually was able to sneak up on Grievous with that thing kind of making its noises.
The only thing I would want to point out about this particular scene is yes, it would be cool to ride one, but let's just appreciate for the moment the ability that Obi-Wan has to connect with creatures. Because we're like, wait a minute, where did this creature come from? But he hops on, and we see little tender moments between him and this creature for just a minute, right? Where this creature obviously trusts, the varactyl obviously trusts him, and he in return trusts him. Like, it's an immediate connection. I think that's something to be said, maybe the unsaid moment of this particular scene.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. And I don't remember where it was that I saw this, but that Obi-Wan had the choice between a machine type transport and the varactyl, and he chose the varactyl because of that, and because of the, and kind of like the whole going back to flying is for droids kind of thing. He would much rather be connected, like you said, with something natural and alive than a machine, which I think says a lot about Obi-Wan.
Yeah, that may have actually been in the novelization, Jay, because I
Maybe
do
it was.
remember there
Yeah.
being a scene where Obi-Wan was trying to pick out a mount, or he was being given the mount by the little Uda character there, and that's where we learned the name Boga from. But so he sneaks up on General Grievous and the Separatist Council, and this whole thing starts with Grievous telling the Council how he's going to be sending them to Mustafar, where they'll be safe. Just as Palpatine, Sidious, in his view, commanded him to do. And I love the arrogance that Gunray has. That because right after Grievous says you'll be safe, and Gunray's like, safe? You let Palpatine escape through your grip. And then he says, without Count Dooku, I doubt your ability to keep us safe, or something like that. And then Grievous's response is, be thankful, Viceroy, that you have not found yourself in my grip. I mean, they're just threatening each other here in all of this.
And I was going to add to your point in this scene, right? There is nothing like this is. I love, like you said, the argument between the two of them, but this sets the stage for the end of the movie when Anakin appears and Palpatine has promised them peace, and Anakin ends up being the one who takes their lives, and they're just like, safe? We're not safe, blah blah blah, and it just totally sets up that final scene, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's put them all in one place so that he can send someone to kill him once the
exactly.
Yeah, Grievous is out of the way, and now we can power down the battle droids, and Palpatine is clear to take over as Emperor. And so it's just it was all part of the master plan that he pulled off rather well. And of course, the highlight of this is Obi-Wan jumping down from his platform behind Grievous and then saying, hello there. And Grievous turns around and says, General Kenobi, you are a bold one, and sends his Magna droids. And then Kenobi, being the boss that he is, just uses the Force to pull a giant piece of machinery down on top of them, and then smacks the head off of one as he walks by. And this is when Grievous says he will take care of them himself. And he takes off his cloak. And this is where we get the big reveal that he can separate his arms into two and use 4 lightsabers at the same time. I think we knew this going into the movie from maybe the trailers or something, or was this a surprise to anybody in the movie?
Nope. We knew this from Gendy's micro series when he
did he actually split his arms in this micro series though, or did he use 2 lightsabers and one foot?
Well, maybe he didn't. Oh, you know what? You bring a good point. I don't know. I'm trying to remember. And maybe we knew there had to be some other way we knew. I don't know if it was the trailers, because I don't know if they revealed that, but there had to be something leading into this, because you're right. We were comfortable enough in that was like, okay, we knew this was going to happen. But you bring up a good point. Now I got to go back and watch the micro series, which is one of my favorite things to watch.
It's so good.
Yeah. I'm going to have to go back and watch it, because I'm trying to remember if indeed that happened or not.
Yeah, I'm scanning through that episode on YouTube as we talk, and he's just using one lightsaber in each hand, but he's doing things that we don't see in the movie, like he's spinning around like a top at the waist.
Yeah.
And then he uses one saber and a foot as well. So he's using 3 at a time. And then he stands on his hands and fights with his feet and does all kinds of fantastic things. But the reveal, to the extent that it wasn't spoiled by a teaser trailer somewhere, was this would have been the big reveal, that he could use 4 lightsabers like this. And so, again, I know when you're putting together trailers, you want certain moments to make the audience go, oh, wow, I got to go see this. But it's Star Wars. We were going to go see it anyway. Did they have to give it away before then?
That's true.
I don't think I really dove into anything before going to see this movie, because I've shared that it was one of the first date nights that my husband and I had after our kids were born, and I was so out of the loop with Star Wars that when this happened, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Wasn't this the first moment that we got a chance to, and not just to take away from him splitting his arms, wasn't this one of the, I remember at the first of the film, I think we saw a tease on this, but where he has his, Now my memory's not serving well, where we see his collection of lightsabers, and now he's going to use them, all of them, or quite a few of them, because he's obviously had this collection for a while. I'm trying to remember, did he show the collection off at the beginning of the film?
All he did is that he took Anakin and Obi-Wan and said, "Your lightsabers will make a fine addition to my collection," and he tucked them away in his cloak. And then we were joking about this not too long ago, that, you know, it would have been funny if Anakin and Obi-Wan like force pulled the wrong lightsabers out when they were getting them back after on the bridge there. But he, you know, again, he doesn't use a lightsaber up until this moment. You know, the Genndy Tartakovsky series does kind of spoil the fact that he can use lightsabers. But if you hadn't seen that and you came into this movie and you were blissfully unaware of any teaser trailers or anything, this would have been the reveal that he could use lightsabers and use 4 of them at one time. And, you know, so well, like I said, I was pretty sure when I went to see this movie for the first time that I knew he could do this, and we had seen him do this in some sort of promotional material for the movie. And I don't think it was one of those things where you had to go seek it out. I'm pretty sure it was just on TV. And
yeah, probably.
I'm now going to have to go look for the trailers after this. But it's one of those things that could have been an absolutely amazing reveal in the movie. And the reason I bring it up is just that, you know, this scene's fine. And, you know, Obi-Wan does a good job of fighting him here and takes off 2 of his hands over the course of the battle. But there was this reputation that they were giving Grievous as a Jedi killer. And before we even got the Genndy Tartakovsky series and stuff like that. So when they already revealed this in a trailer before the movie, I felt like it almost kind of harmed Grievous's reputation, because this would have been like such a huge, oh wow moment if we hadn't known it going in.
The other thing that I think maybe takes away from the reputation a little bit, I felt like we got robbed. This was such a short fight scene. Mm-hmm. It ended far too quickly. And sure, that's a testament to Obi-Wan, but I felt like it ended far too quickly, and he so easily took 2 of the arms of General Grievous that I felt like I felt robbed. We needed more of this battle. We needed more of this to go on than what happened.
Right. And there's a deleted scene where Grievous kills Shakti earlier in the movie. Mm-hmm. And perhaps if we had seen that, then Grievous would have been more menacing coming. I mean, you know, he doesn't get a chance to do a whole lot to earn that reputation in this movie before he has this fight with Obi-Wan. So again, I don't want to come off like I'm picking on this movie, because it generally is a fantastic movie, one of the best Star Wars movies ever that's out there. But there are just little things that are editorial decisions that they make when they're putting the whole thing together. And perhaps Grievous could have benefited from having a few more scenes where he got to be deadly and make the audience fear for Obi-Wan in this moment. Of course, we all know he's going to live because he's in A New Hope, but you get what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I agree.
Jay, any observations?
No, I'm with you guys. And I think that the fact that they also made him cough as he was separating his arms is a fun little touch. But I guess it just goes to serve too, that just to show how amazing Obi-Wan really is, and that he's just such a finesse fighter that you don't even realize that it's happening until it already does happen. And Obi-Wan's just having so much fun. I mean, you could tell, you know, he's got the smile on his face, and he's just, you know, he's bantering, and I mean, he's like, it's like he's with Asajj, but, you know, leveled up kind of thing.
Well, by the way, too, the other part about this scene too, we get this same what you were talking earlier, mirrored scenes a little bit, Jay. Mm-hmm. Let's go back to Rebels too. This is one of only 2 scenes where we see Obi-Wan gear up to battle, and he's got his 2 fingers pointing out. He's like, bring it on. Bring it on.
Love it. The stance. That is the stance.
And we'll give just a little bit more attention to hello there. I mean, who hasn't done that 1,000 times after seeing this movie? When I met Ewan McGregor at Star Wars Celebration in 2022, that's exactly how he greeted us when we got to the table.
Nice.
Hello there. And I was like, that was worth it. That was worth standing in line for the last 45 minutes. Yeah. And and then of course James Arnold Taylor does a great job with that as well. So
for sure.
So their duel gets interrupted by the clones arriving. And to this, Grievous says, army or not, you must realize you are doomed. And Obi-Wan's response is, oh, I don't think so. And this is the first time Obi-Wan uses a force power and sends, against Grievous, I should say, by using force push to send him up against the wall. Grievous retreats to his wheel bike and promptly runs over a battle droid as he begins to run away from Obi-Wan, who summons a varactyl and picks up the pursuit. And in the process, Obi-Wan drops his lightsaber, which conveniently falls at the feet of Commander Cody, who picks it up with a "what the" moment as he's thinking around. Where did this come from? So, it's just one of those things where, we were just talking about Grievous's reputation. He was supposed to be this Jedi killer, but Mace Windu earlier in this movie call says to Palpatine is like, Grievous will run away and hide. He's a coward. And yeah, that's kind of what happens here. And it's kind of a balance that would have been difficult to maintain here. He's supposed to be deadly, but at the same time, when the odds go against him, he runs away. And so it makes it possible for these type of insults to be hurled his way.
Well, I want to throw in one more thought. You mentioned the thing that he said to Obi-Wan. Talk about foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm.
You must know that you are doomed. The rest of us know what's coming. Obi-Wan doesn't yet, but whoa. That phrase.
Yeah.
And the way he looked at Obi-Wan when he said it, like, you're doomed.
Yes. And I love how they both, the camera just focuses on both of their sets of eyes too. Like a standoff.
Yep.
That's good. It was a nice touch. And that brings us to the end of the segment. Do either of you have any other observations you want to share about this before we wrap it up?
Not really. I mean, what more can I say about Revenge of the Sith as a whole? But I'm glad we chose this section. And honestly, I was a little bummed because I was going to miss I missed the conversation about one of my favorite scenes. But it allowed me to rewatch this a little bit and think about it a little more, because I love that you guys break this down and go segments at a time, because it gives me a moment to revisit segments and maybe see them from, dare we say, a different point of view that you haven't watched before. And it was really kind of cool to rewatch this and relive it and think about some of the things that either I missed, forgot about, or easily glazed over.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's what we discovered long ago when we started doing these. You're right, Alan. It's that when you're focusing on a smaller portion of the movie, you notice the details because you're not sitting down to watch the entire 2 hours. You're watching 10, 12 minutes of it. And then when it gives you an opportunity to think of these scenes in the bigger context. And stuff jumps out at you all the time. And you're absolutely right. Jay, any other final thoughts from you?
Yeah, no, I think we've hit, pretty well everything here. And I mean, we could go into the music, we could go into some of the beautiful details and CG effects and, just everything. I mean, it's just so perfect. It's a masterpiece.
We do 12 segments a year. We could easily do 36.
I'm getting chills while you talk about the music. I'm serious when I say this entire movie is easily John Williams' best piece of music that he's written.
Amazing.
Haven't even gotten to Battle of the Heroes yet. So
nope.
Oh yes.
All right. Well, Alan, thank you so much for joining us for this. It was really good to have you back on the show and discuss this. I've been looking forward to having you on because, like I said, I do remember when we had you on the podcast last time, you talked about how Revenge of the Sith was your favorite Star Wars movie. So I knew you'd be a perfect guest to get for this. Before you go, you want to remind everybody where they can find you and what it is that you do.
So I'm not on social media much these days. I do have Instagram. I do check in once in a while, but that's where it ends for social media. I think I'm on Blue Sky, but I just don't get on there. Life has become more important, so I'm not on there. But I am a co-host of Idiots Array, the podcast, with our good friends Ryder Waldron and Mark Suter, and I enjoy it. We discuss, we have fun. We discuss in-depth stuff, as well as just having some fun little brackets and contests and things that we talk about with each other and banter. The best place to reach me is really through our email, idiotsarraypodcast@gmail.com, because I do read those emails from our guests. And so anytime anybody wants to reach in, really, I'll put my own email there, JediZaugg@gmail. You can reach out to me anytime. and I'll gladly respond and have a conversation with you. But that's the best way to get me.
All
Love
right.
Idiots Array. So you guys keep up the good work. It's always so much fun to listen to you guys.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course.
And there you have it. That was Alan Zaugg from Idiots Array joining us here on the Podcast Stardust for part 5 of our Revenge of the Sith series. And, as Alan was just saying, the great thing about this series, to toot our own horns for just a second, is that it really does give us this opportunity to dive in depth on segments and talk about things that would otherwise likely get overlooked when you're discussing about the movie as a whole. And this episode was a prime example of that.
Oh, definitely. And I always love the perspective that Alan brings to everything. And he's so passionate about everything with Star Wars. And it is just contagious. And it's so appreciated.
Yeah. I think it was Attack of the Clones, maybe, when we had him on for last. I'll have to go back and check, but I remember him saying that Revenge of the Sith was his favorite Star Wars movie. And so it was really great to have him on for this one. I kind of bookmarked that to make sure that we got him back, and I'm glad you got that set up.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. Well, then, with that, I just want to thank you all for joining us for this episode of Podcast Stardust and this installment of the Revenge of the Sith series. And if you want to make sure you don't miss next month's installment, the easiest way to do that is make sure that you've subscribed to the podcast on your podcatcher of choice. And once you've done that, we'd really appreciate it if you could rate, review, and like the show. That helps us get found by others. And if you want more episodes of Podcast Stardust beyond what you're going to find in your podcatcher, you head over to retrozat.com, where you'll find other great shows like Agents of Shield Case Files, Animaniacast, Brews and Blasters, Dorklair, Doomcast, Enjoy Stuff, Love, Death, and Robots Plus, Superhero Suite, and Warp Trails. Jay, you want to go ahead and remind everybody what our social media contacts are one more time?
Sure. And like Dennis said, if you want more, you really should. Don't be like Anakin. Don't worry about it. We're all over the place. We are on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust. We have some Pinterest boards. We're on YouTube and YouTube Music, where you can head over to both of those, like, subscribe, and share those out. And always let us know what you think of our episodes on those outlets as well, because we want to know what you think of Revenge of the Sith in general, and especially the segment. And then if you are in need of some new Podcast Stardust swag for your wardrobe, you can head over to TeePublic, and the link to that is in our show notes. And you can pick up one of 7 different show logo designs available on all kinds of things, from t-shirts and sweatshirts to home goods and tote bags and everything in between.
Jay, and remind everybody what's going on in cosplay.
Sure. Well, the cosplay train just keeps on rolling. So you can catch me on Instagram at j.snipscosplay. And a couple weeks ago, I just had an event close to my hometown. So there's a lot of new photos there of me as Hera from the Ahsoka series. And you can also catch me as Ahsoka herself from the Clone Wars, Hera from Rebels, as well as the Fourth Sister, and my original concept Mandalorian, including a lot of other things as well, here and there and everywhere. So once again, that's at j.snipscosplay.
All right. As of the date we're recording this, our schedule is a little bit in flux, so that we can recording at different times so we can accommodate some stuff. But the current plan is for us to cover recent news on Friday. On Monday, we'll be discussing episode 2 from season 2 of Light and Magic. With that said, thanks for listening to episode 892 of Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have a great week. And until next time, may the Force be with you.